Hey y'all. So I had to run home because of a missing babysitter. She was sick, so I got to get back for my daughter. So I wanted to send just a quick video. Let me just close this so that we can debrief books 7 and 8 before you guys read. Um, and that's what today will be in seventh period. Is y'all will watch this video. You'll write just for a couple minutes to kind of collect your thoughts over something. And then you'll spend the rest of the time reading book 9, and if you get there, book 10. So before we get to any of that, though, right here above my head on the whiteboard, um, I wrote down what we're guiding everything towards as we go through the Odyssey, which is this idea that there are twists and turns on the journey home. All right, everything we do in the Odyssey is going to be focused on that. There are twists and turns on the journey home. Um, Nasha, I think you were out, so write this in your field notes. Everyone else, I think y'all have this down. But when we say home, we're talking about things as they ought to be, peace. So for Odysseus, that is Ithaca, that is being reunited with Penelope, that is being reunited with his son, Telemachus, right? That is ridding the palace of the suitors. That is how things ought to be. Um, and that is what we want in our own lives as well, right? We want to be in a world where things are as they ought to be, where there is peace, where people don't die, where there is no sickness, where people from the Learning Center aren't made fun of, where racism doesn't hurt people, where the powerful don't dominate the less powerful, right? All these things we want home too, just like Odysseus does. But there are twists and turns on this journey home, right? There are things that keep us from home, the things that disrupt peace, uh, all the things I just named, right? For Odysseus, those things are Calypso that we've seen, the suitors, Poseidon, right? Being shipwrecked, all these things. And we too carry within us and encounter things that keep us from reaching that place where things are as they ought to be. So just keep that in mind, right? Everything we do is going to be geared towards that. Um, let's do a quick recap of book 7 and 8. So it starts with Athena leads Odysseus to the palace, right? So Athena disguises herself as a little girl, leads Odysseus to the palace to meet King Alcinous and the queen, right? So Princess Nausicaa, the girl who found Odysseus by the river, Odysseus now goes and meets her parents, the ones who actually have power to help him. And classic Greek hospitality, Greek xenia, which we were going to talk about today, but we'll have to push that back for this period. They hold a big feast for Odysseus and celebrate his arrival with kind of these like Olympic games, right? So before they even know who he is, the king and queen welcome him. They know that he's a stranger who needs help. And they hold this huge feast. They do like boxing and running. It's almost like these Olympic games they put on to celebrate this stranger's arrival who has asked them for help. And again, we'll talk about how different that is than our culture and how we receive the stranger. But there's something really beautiful about that we'll dig into. While they're doing these Olympic games, Odysseus is just kind of hanging out watching. And if you remember, someone comes up to Odysseus and like kind of challenges him. Is like, "Hey, are you just gonna sit by and watch? Like, I don't really think you're an athlete like the rest of these guys are. I think you're kind of soft." Um, and Odysseus like really fires him up, right? And we see kind of a little bit more of his character. That he is very prideful. Um, maybe not in a bad sense. Maybe just in the sense of like he stands up for himself. Maybe it goes too far, but he's challenged, and so he like throws this discus farther than everyone else could. And then he's like, "What else do you want to do? Do you want to box? I'll fight anybody. Do you want to run? I'm still faster than all you guys. Even though I've been suffering for 20 years, I can still dominate all of you." And the king steps in and is like, okay, we were wrong. This guy over here, one of my subjects, should never have challenged you. We apologize. Let's just keep feasting. And he kind of calms the situation down. And they continue to feast. Then a poet sings this song of this love triangle between the gods. We can look at that on Wednesday, but he sings that story, right? We'll talk about why Homer felt the need to include that. And then eventually they promise to send Odysseus home on a ship, right? And right at the end of chapter 8, King Alcinous is like, okay, who are you? Right? We've had this feast. We've welcomed you. You've slept in our house. I even offered to marry you to my daughter. Who are you? Right? And he asks them to tell him his story. Right? So that's where we end up with book 8. Hopefully all of that, you guys were tracking with that. If not, and when it's time to read, you need to go back and do like a Spartan Notes revision of 7 and 8. Since we're not there to talk about it, feel free to do that. But before we go to read, actually, no, let's just go ahead and read. Let's do that. So here's what I want you guys to do. Flip to book 9. And I'll give you just a sec to get there. And once you're at book 9, at the top of book 9, I want you guys to write this. Let's just keep the timeline in order. And we'll do the thing I was going to have you all write about. We'll do that Wednesday as well. So the Iliad was years 1 through 10. All right, so this is what I want you to write at the top of book 9. The Iliad is years 1 through 10, right? That 10-year war that we read about in the graphic novel. Then we know that time passes and that Odysseus can't get home. And so books 1 through 4 were Telemachus and Penelope at 19 and a half years. Remember when we opened the book, Odysseus has been gone the 10 years of the Iliad. He's also been gone another 9 and a half years that we don't know anything about. And we start books 1 through 4 with Telemachus and Penelope right at the end of his journey. Then we get books 5 through 8, which we just read. And that is Odysseus at 19 and a half years. So we just jump place, still at the same time. We still have this 9 and a half years that we don't know anything about. But 5 through 8 was the story of him finally leaving Calypso and then getting to Phaeacia, where he meets the princess, and then going to the king's house, and then them holding the feast, and then the king promising, all right, I'm about to send you home. And we know he's about to get home because it's 19 and a half years. And we know he gets home at the 20th year. Right? So we're still in the same timeline of this 19 and a half years. But what I want you to write right here is now we're moving into books 9 through 12. This is our next section. And this is where we're going to be looking at years 10 through 12. All right, so we're going to get kind of a 2-year period. And actually, let's go ahead and say this. 10 through 19 and a half. That'll be easier to think about. So now we're getting all the backstory, right? And this is where Odysseus is going to tell his story. So the king asked him, as you remember, the king asked him who he was, right? And he's going to go on this long story telling about when he left Troy and all the different places that he got to. So now we're getting all the stuff we didn't understand before. This is just a flashback, all right? While the whole time these 4 books are going, 9 through 12, he's still with the Phaeacians, right? He hasn't left. He's just telling the story, all right? So what I want you guys to look for in book 9 is 3 things are going to happen. He's going to land at the island of the Cetones. You don't have to write this part down unless you want to. He's going to leave Troy, tell about when he left Troy. He's going to land at the island of the Cicones, or the Cicones. He's then going to go to the island of the Lotus Eaters, which are these like druggies. And then he's going to land at the island of the Cyclops. And we're going to get those three stories. What happened with the Cicones, what happened with the Lotus Eaters, what happened with the Cyclops. And he's telling the king his story. All right? So hopefully that makes sense. We'll fill in stuff as needed when we come back. On Canvas is the audiobook and some reading questions, right? So keep those in front of you as you're listening to the audiobook, so you can make sure. We'll probably do a reading check on Wednesday and Thursday, so we can make sure that you're following and you're annotating the right stuff. Yeah, I'll see you guys Wednesday. Ms. Gallagher, thank you.